Oh, hi. Hopefully you guys worked on your worksheets nice and hard. I know I did. If this is your first time checking out this series, I definitely recommend looking at some of the first videos we've done on the topic. Click on the iCard right here or check the description down below. So I did get a few questions about the worksheet. How come we don't need to add accidentals? What are the complete set of rules for avoid tensions? And can I stack thirds on any note in the key? And how does all of this apply to the Moonlight Sonata? Well, let's dive into all of this today. Okay, first of all, yes, you can stack thirds on any note in the scale or any degree in the key. We did it on the 2, the 5, and the 1, but you can also do it on the 3, the 4, the 6, and the 7. And when you do this, you get the diatonic chords represented by the key signature that's at the beginning of the song. All this really just boils down to following 2 easy steps. Stack thirds to find your chord tones and tensions, and apply the flat 9 rule to find your avoid tensions, with an exception on dominant chords, which we'll be getting into today. And you've probably seen this many times. In C, we get C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7, A minor 7, and B minor 7 flat 5, or B half diminished. And that set of diatonic chords is constant across all major keys. We always get 1 major 7, 2 minor 7, 3 minor 7, 4 major 7, 5 7, 6 minor 7, and 7 minor 7 flat 5. For example, let's say we're in the key of A major with 3 sharps, F, C, and G. The diatonic chords are A major 7, B minor 7, C sharp minor 7, the 4 is D major 7, the 5 is E7, and then we go to F sharp minor 7, and finally our 7 chord is G sharp minor 7, flat 5. In the key of B flat with 2 flats, we get B flat major 7, C minor 7, D minor 7, and then E flat major 7, F7, our 6 chord is G minor 7, and our 7 chord is A minor 7 flat 5. So no matter which key we're in, the diatonic chords will always be of the same type. As we'll see later, each diatonic chord belongs to one of 3 harmonic regions: tonic, subdominant, or dominant. So the 4 is always a 4 major 7 and always a subdominant. And the 5 is always a 5 7 in the dominant region. But don't worry, we don't need to get into harmony just yet. Now, if we use our method of stacking thirds from our last video, we get the complete expanded chords. And as we've seen before, we can classify all the notes in these chords as inside notes. The bottom 4 are the chord tones, the root, the fifth, and the guide tones. And the top 3 notes are the tensions, available or avoid. I also gave you a simple rule to find the avoid tensions by checking if said tension was a flat 9 above a chord tone. All tensions that are a flat 9 or a half step above a chord tone are probably avoid tensions. So in C major 7, the F, which is tension 11, should be an avoid tension because it's a flat 9 above E, the third of the chord. If this is getting confusing, please go watch the previous video where we explain all of this in great detail. I also told you that there was an exception to this rule. However, in order for us to understand this exception, we need to introduce a very important concept, which will become very useful later on: non-diatonic chords, in particular, secondary dominants. Look at this score in the key of C major. So the first chord, G7, is a 5/7 of C, right? This movement from 5 to 1 is, as you probably know, an authentic cadence. In fact, any dominant chord, such as the G7 in our example, wants to resolve to a chord with its root a perfect fifth down. In our example, C is a perfect fifth below G, so G7 wants to resolve to C major or C minor. D7 wants to resolve to a G chord, and A7 wants to resolve to a D chord. You get the idea. This movement of a perfect fifth on the root from a dominant chord releases lots of harmonic tension. Not only is this root movement so crucial to the essence of this cadence, but what is also vital to the tension release function of this cadence is the tritone resolution embedded within it. Remember, all dominant chords contain a tritone, and these tritones all contain the leading tones of the dominant's target. And this leading tone always wants to resolve a half step up. All right, so back to the score. You see that G sharp? This note is not in the C major scale. So what's the role of this note, and why does it sound so nice? When we look at the notes surrounding it, we can see this is an E7 chord. E, G sharp, B, and D. Where does this come from? Well, every time you see an accidental in a score, in particular a raised note, like in our example, the G sharp is a raised G, your best bet is to assume that this note is a leading tone. If we look at the next chord in the score, we can see it as an A minor. The G sharp is the leading tone in A minor. This note desperately wants to resolve a half step up to A. The E7, a dominant chord, wants to resolve a perfect fifth down, and it does. It resolves to A minor. Remember, this A minor is a diatonic chord in our key of C major. It's the sixth minor in the key of C major. And the E7 is a dominant chord that wants to resolve to A minor. E7 is essentially the 5 of A minor. This is what we call a secondary dominant. A 5-7 of any diatonic chord, except the 1, is a secondary dominant. For example, A7 is the 5-7 of D minor, which is diatonic in the key of C. So A7 is a secondary dominant in the key of C. So if we want to classify the notes in the E7 chord, we just stack thirds as we do for any diatonic chord, and then change the G to a G sharp, as the score does. So now we have E, G sharp, B, and D, as well as F, A, and C. The 4 notes at the bottom are the chord tones, E, G sharp, B, and D, which gives us an E7 chord. And the top 3 notes, F, A, and C, well, those are the tensions. F is the flat 9, A is the 11, and C is the flat 13. If we use the flat 9 rule to find the avoid tensions, we see that F is a half step above E. So that means F as a tension is also a flat 9 above E, the root, which is a chord tone. This would mean that following the flat 9 rule that we laid out for you in the second video, F should be an avoid note. The A is a half step above the G sharp, which means A as a tension is also a flat 9 above a chord tone, the G sharp, and therefore should be an avoid tension. And the C is also a half step above a chord tone, B, which means it should also be an avoid note. So all the tensions in the E7 chord, as the 5 of 6, seem to be avoid notes. But that's not actually the case, because E7 is a dominant chord. And dominant chords, by their very nature, offer harmonic tension that wants to resolve to a target. The only purpose of the E7 is to create tension that will be resolved when we move to the A minor chord. So in the case of dominant chords, the flat 9 interval, the nastiest interval of all, is actually welcome. Except when the flat 9 is above a guide tone. Okay, let's just take a second here and pause. I remember when I learned this exception for the first time, and it drove me nuts. The problem is that I've just introduced so many concepts that if you've never seen them, it could be overwhelming. Let's take a step back and look at the note classification process one more time. Remember, all of this boils down to following just 2 easy steps. We're stacking thirds and looking for flat 9s. That's it. So I have a C major 7. C, E, G, and B, then D, F, and A. C, E, G, and B are chord tones, and D, F, and A are tensions. C is the root, G is the 5th, and E and B are the 3rd and the 7th, which we call guide tones because they contain the essence of the chord. F is an avoid tension because it's a flat 9 above E, a chord tone. Now, let's take E7 as the 5 of 6, a secondary dominant in the key of C major. So we stack thirds and we get E, G sharp, B, and D, and then F, A, and C. E, G sharp, B, and D are the chord tones, and F, A, and C are the tensions. E is the root, B is the fifth, G sharp and D are the third and the seventh, which again we call the guide tones. But this time, E7 is a dominant chord. So the rule of the flat 9 to determine if a tension is an avoid tension only applies to guide tones. All of the tensions are available unless they're a flat 9 above a guide tone. So while F is a half step above E, the root, this is completely irrelevant because E is not a guide tone. This means that F is actually available. The same thing goes for C. C is a half step above B, the fifth. But the fifth, again, is not a guide tone, so we're okay here also. The only tension that is above a guide tone is the A, tension 11. A is a flat 9 above G sharp, one of our guide tones. This means that we cannot apply our exception to the flat 9 rule to tension 11. A is an avoid note. More to the point, tension natural 11 is always an avoid tension as it relates to dominant chords. Notice I said natural. When dealing with dominant chords, whether they target major or minor, you should always avoid tension 11. And that's where we get the symbol E7 flat 9 flat 13 or E7 flat 9, which you'll find in so many charts. Let's do another example. We're still in the key of C major, but now there's an F sharp in the score. As you can see, this is a D7 chord. So we stack thirds starting on D, and then we change the F to an F sharp. We'll get D, F sharp, A, and C, and then E, G, and B. D, F sharp, A, and C are the chord tones. E, G, and B are the tensions. G is an avoid tension because it's a flat 9 above the F sharp, a guide tone. And again, it's tension 11. So we end up with a D7, 9, 13. One more example. Let's say we're in the key of B flat major with 2 flats in the key signature, and we also have an F sharp appearing here. So this is also a D7 chord. Now we stack thirds and we change the F to an F sharp, and we get D, F sharp, A, and C, and then E flat, G, and B flat. D, F sharp, C, and A are the chord tones, and E flat, G, and B flat are the tensions. G is an avoid tension because it's a flat 9 above the F sharp, a guide tone. And again, it is tension 11. But this time, we end up with a D7 flat 9, flat 13. See how completely different these two D7 chords are? The one in C major is working as the 5 of 5. And it's a D7, natural 9, natural 13, with G as an avoid tension. The one in B flat major is working as a 5 of 6, and it's a D7, flat 9, flat 13, with G also as an avoid tension. This is one of the things jazz players do so well. They know how to interpret this secondary dominant. They know the difference between a D7 as the 5 of 6 and a D7 is just the 5 of 5. So in the first example, when I see a D7, I would probably play something like this. And in the second example, I would probably play something like this. But on the chart, there's no indication of what exactly to play. It's all in the context. I know this was a dense video, and if you're still here, congratulations. So for this week's homework, we have prepared a worksheet with all the secondary dominants in the key of C and an empty worksheet so you can practice the new concepts in all keys. And for your information, the only diatonic chord that does not have a secondary dominant is the 7 minor 7 flat 5, but all the rest do. So write them down, stack the thirds, and find the avoid tensions. Should be easy, just avoid tension 11. Then create the voicings using root and 2 guide tones on the left hand and 2 tensions on the right, as we did last time. And like we always say, if you really want to understand the language of jazz, you need to start listening to the people that speak it fluently. Players like Bill Evans, in particular, his album Affinity from 1978. This is, in my opinion, the best Bill Evans album. Check the entire album, it's brilliant. His harmonic concepts, his voicings, reharmonizations, rhythmic displacements are above anything else I've ever heard. And it's not only about the notes he plays. Listen to the sounds he gets from the piano. It's absolutely wild. I'll put a link to the song in the description down below and hit us up on the comments to let us know what you think. We get the complete expanded chords. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna recite all of this. When we look at the notes accompanying, what? All right. No, I want to be doing absolutely nothing. I want to be hard at work after my worksheets. Okay. I worked really hard on my worksheets. If you haven't, definitely check out what?